All right, I think we can probably get a crack-a-lackin'. Is everyone good spiritually? All right, so the goal of this is basically to chat about how D&D and tabletop games is essentially 110% what improv is. And I am talking about crunchy, nerdy improv as taught by the Upright Citizens Brigade. UCB, if you don't know, is like a I guess you would say like a modern forefathers, is that the right word? I don't know. That kind of that's what people follow now. That's like what the logic is. And when you get real improv snobby, they're like, oh, what do you do? Do you do the UCB way? Do you do this way? There's a lot of different schools, whatever. A little bit about me. My name's Tim Lanning. I'm on. Come on in. Come on in. Let's wait for you to sit down and shit. So my name's Tim Lanning. I'm on Drunks and Dragons and Cast of Thrones, and most importantly, Young Pope. I don't do improv as much as I used to, but I've been somewhat active in the scene since 2013. I've been to some marathons, some contests, things like that. A lot of fun. If any of you are curious about more improv stuff, look up the Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB. See if there's like YouTube, things like that. My favorite team on the YouTube is called Fuck That Shit. So check out Fuck That Shit. I think it's they're at in New York, and they have like a long-running cage match, I think is what it's called. It really shows you the ultimate goal. Oh, come on in. The ultimate goal of what we all want to do when we're like playing games with our bros is to have fun and be silly. But to do that, you kind of have to start removing roadblocks. So basically, what we're going to do here is combo of two things, right? I'm gonna sprout out some, I guess you'd say, nerdy improv buzzwords for y'all to think about. And second, since people wanted it, I'm gonna teach you the improv games that we sometimes play before D&D, and that makes Jennifer mad. Because the overall goal of this panel is to remove the roadblocks that you accidentally put in your head when you get together. The best part about getting good at improv is sort of getting your brain out of the way. Have any of you read Patrick Rothfuss's Kingkiller Chronicles or whatever it's called? So doesn't he? We got one in the back. Basically, the idea is his magic, right? He splits his mind, something like that, right? And he's able to do multiple things at once. So the ultimate goal is to be able to be doing more than one thing at once, right? So we call this active listening. We're not going to be able to crack any of these codes of how to yes and how to active listening, but some of the games I'm going to teach you, which sounds stupid on the outset, and that's the point, really. Some of them are literally, hey, come on in, are literally just to be stupid, to get you in the mood to kind of be weird, to not get in your way. As I said before, the ultimate goal is to remove all the roadblocks. So, active listening basically is you are actively participating in the scene. So if it's not your turn, if you play a very like turn-based campaign or whatever, while it's not your turn, you're listening and you're waiting for, instead of waiting for your chance to just like talk or take your action or whatever, you're involved. You're 100% there all the time. It's hard to do when you're preparing like your combat round or something like that. But the ultimate goal that so many people want to have is to be able to do something awesome, right? And sometimes they get so in their head that they can't do anything. Active listening just takes practice. It's harder at first, but really all you gotta do is just do it. And you do it by kind of getting out of your own head. As I said, there's no good way to crack it per se, but some ways that you can try to get it greased up a little bit is, simply put, don't think about what you're going to do. get out of the way of your own. Hey, get out of your own way by not overthinking it. And telling someone not to overthink something is probably a pretty good surefire way to automatically make you overthink it. But oh hey, I think we see some more people.
Yeah.
Hey, what's that? Hey,
Getting good. I know they're coming.
So, I will not ask or force anyone to do any sort of forced improv, but I eventually might ask for volunteers, as it's helpful to have different people going back and forth. So, I'm going to go through some of the buzzwordy improv words and just kind of slightly explain them so that you can, I don't know, write it down. I don't know. So everyone always hears yes and, right? Yes and is the concept of always saying yes to the scene you're in. So in a D&D way, you don't want to stop the flow. It's not saying yes to everything like in character, if that makes sense. Sometimes saying no is a yes and. If your scene is basically where your character should say no, right? That's pretty obvious, but sometimes people kind of get in their own head and think yes and is literally agreeing to everything. It's not agreeing to everything, it's agreeing to the spirit of the scene. The scene that you have set up between you and your DM in this instance is, as long as you don't break it. Because, as I said a couple times, you need to get out of your own way. And one of the ways you do that is to remove barriers. No's. The reason why yes and is so important is because breaking that flow is the number one derailment of a good improv scene. Has anyone seen improv?
Yes.
Like real?
Yeah.
Okay. Got all sorts of people. That's good. So when you first see it, it's so fascinating to see how people can just do it, right? But through all these practices they do, it's basically second nature and inherently getting out of your own way. I'm gonna talk about the first game. It's called Ravioli. If you've been around me, I've been singing it for a while. So let me get the rules pulled up here. There we go. Okay. The game's called Things That Rhyme with Ravioli, and one person says the word steak. Okay. So we all go, things that rhyme with ravioli, things that rhyme with ravioli. And I say steak, and then we all say steakioli. Then you say bake, bakeioli. Then you go around the circle, and you do shake. So it's basically, say the word, whatever the word it is, next person says a word that rhymes with it, adding ioli. And then when you go around, you go, when you get all the way back to the first person, everyone goes, these things rhyme with ravioli. And you say it 3 times. And the next person starts the next pattern. So many things in improv follow patterns. And again, that's because turning your mind off, going on autopilot so that you can do stuff. This one is good because it's stupid and it makes you think quickly. Hey, come on in. It's kind of a shitty example, but pickup artists do a thing. Has anyone here read the game? So, the game is holistically shitty if you approach it the wrong way, but it's really good for tabletop stuff because the whole thing... If you're trying to really sarge on a 10, it's good, but if you're also doing something else... I don't know if we're out of chairs or not, but if some folks want to make buddies...
We got one.
So, I feel like I'm going to repeat the getting out of your way and mental blocks things over and over again because that's the only thing I want any of you to take. Obviously, the games to bring back to your people. But the thing with the game is this. I heard a story, I don't know if this is true, that the Bud from Married with Children would go out to bars with a dildo on his face. And the point was, if you're comfortable with it, that's why the mystery guy dresses like a wackadoo. Because he's peacocking, 1. 2, if you can get comfortable at the worst times, you're going to be extremely comfortable at normal times. It's like when Goku trained with the turtle shells. So that's
Best analogy ever.
yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest what?
Just tie everything back.
Yes, yeah. Improv's like Master Roshi, horny. So I guess like a bullet point for this would be is getting comfortable being wrong, right? Being silly, being weird, being when most people start playing D&D, right? They're like locked up. They are the turtle that is on Goku's back. Where it's impossible to start thinking of like everything of like, well, what does my character do? There's a million things I could do. Well, if you get comfortable with just being dumb and silly, like follow silliness, follow that stuff, then you'll surprise yourself, right? When Jennifer and I first did our very first D&D campaign, hey, come on in. We were obviously very uncomfortable, right? We were, yeah, we have a seat.
Right here. Yes.
We didn't know what to do. No one knows what to do when they first start. So what we did was kind of locked up and sort of like the Drunks and Dragons. All of our first characters were just us, right? Many people's first characters just them. That's an easy like life hack to get a quick character going. But if you get used to being kind of silly, you can do all sorts of other things. So that's why some people prefer to play things that are completely different from them. One of the early improv tips that I kind of taught myself is, it's a dumb thing, but it's like having a character with a voice, literally a different voice, helps you get in character. It can sometimes be shitty when you, it's a bad habit to get into, but it's a good habit to start initially because it gets the balls rolling. It removes a barrier. So the whole thing is you want to use these quick e-hacks initially so that when you can do, harder stuff later. So take Ravioli back to your group. They're going to think it's dumb. But the whole following like dumb shit keeps everyone silly. And if everyone's laughing, the thing that you might want to do on your turn or whatever, that you're like, I don't want to jump on the Kraken. That seems like a bad idea. Like, no, jump on the Kraken. Do that. And then you'll surprise yourself. And then the first moment that you surprise even yourself, automatically you're going to be hooked on trying to do new shit. This isn't really a role play panel. It's like a getting out of your own head, right? And quick thinking is going to be super hard to do. That's why a lot of these games require folks to quickly think. Ravioli has just a little bit of that, but it's just so much fun, and it gets in your head, which is easy. I'm going to throw up.
We're believing in Tim. You got this.
Yeah, over here. The next game I'm going to teach you is called 7-Line Story. 7-Line Story is going to be a little bit harder because I clicked an emoji. 7-Line Story is going to be kind of tough to teach your own people, but if you can kind of follow the basics of it, right, then you're going to unlock like a group mind thing. Group mind is the second most important thing that I want y'all to think about because you're a group, right? You're literally an adventuring group going to do shit. So if you get in a place where everyone else's turn is just as important to you as your own turn, then good shit will happen. You vibe really well. Okay, 7-Line Story is as such. You basically tell a story in 7 lines. 7 sentences, I guess you'd say. First line is, they all start with the same stuff, or they follow a pattern. Once upon a time, next sentence starts with, and every day, and then the next line starts with, until one day, next line, and then, next line, and then, next line, and finally, and then final line is, and ever since. So basically, this is going to kind of help you guys have an internally consistent monologue, so to speak, or not monologue, it's the wrong word. Internally consistent story is probably the easiest way to say it. And you're doing it together. That's not just one person doing it. There's another game that's just like it, which is like one-word story. where everyone goes around and says one word, and you try to have it make logical sense. Both one-word story is easier to get going, so I tried that one first. It's literally just go around, each person says one word, and you try to get a story that doesn't end in like dildos or something like that. Most people, because exactly, we've all been there. In some of the early ways to test you and your people would be to not go super. I know I said be silly, but be grounded. There's a term that's another buzzword, I guess you say. Be grounded. One of the reason why I said doing accents is a bad long-term crutch is because you turn cartoonish. Now that works in D&D a lot of times because you can't be a cartoon, right? But so many times the improv note I would get was like, all right, now do that different and not as a cartoon character. Like, how would you actually respond to this? So it's like, once upon a time there was a dog named Jeff, and every day Jeff went to the lake until one day the lake dried up. And then he started trying to find a new lake. And then he finally found the deepest lake. And finally he had a new best lake. And ever since, he never searched for lakes again. That was a bad example. But it was an example. And we learned from it.
It was a growing experience.
One more time, can you go into
Yeah.
the list of things again?
It's once upon a time, and every day, until one day, and then, and finally, and ever since. The person that I was talking to wrote in every sense, and it's really fucking me up right now. But it's weird because the whole thing you want to try to do, right, is to get everyone vibing real hard, group mind, whatever, and the games are going to do that through being silly, through just not fucking it up, but someone's going to try to fuck it up. Don't get mad at them, right? Don't be like, oh, Craig is a real shitbag, and he's the one that always takes it down to shit factory. Try to do things that are simple. Keep it simple, stupid isn't easy, thing that everyone should do. And one of the reasons why Drunks and Dragons is good is because we all like each other and we vibe really hard. We got lucky at that, and I don't know how we did it, but basically, if you and your table group don't do that, you're fucked anyways. But if you can add in some of this extra spice of like, hey man, we are all on the same page, we're trying these fun games, we all kind of have removed some of our armor and played Ravioli or whatever, it's better. Let's talk about another game and why it's important. Build a Room. Build a Room is a very good game. It's very fun. Not fun. It's basic. Build a Room is as such. Every person puts a little bit in their room. So right here, you would say like, all right, in this room there is a poster of a beautiful kitten. And then the next person would be like, and over here is a box of chocolates. And over here, there's a blood stain because he shit his pants, and then that's ruined. But like, everyone's going to add a little bit to it, and then from that, you can kind of either roll with it and kind of have fun in that place. I guess to spin this improv game into a D&D thing, like if you go into like build a dungeon, that's in Dragons. You can kind of build a group room, and everyone sort of has their own agency and ownness. Allowing people to have their own agency and ownness on stuff is very important. It keeps everyone on the same page, even if the DM obviously is doing all that shit. So build a room, it's extremely easy. It's just you build a room by describing it, and it gets you in the mode of, well, there's not a picture of a kitten on the wall, but when you can eventually sort of open your brain, like is it Kavo? Is that how you pronounce it? Can do it from the King Killer Chronicles. Not all you read it, so this isn't a good example, and I should stop referencing it. If you can all sort of like envision something that doesn't exist, because I mean that's what we do when we play D&D games. Yeah. Question.
So it's like the episode of SpongeBob where they used their imagination and they played in the box and Squidward got really mad.
Yes, I haven't seen it, but that sounds about right. Yeah. Build a Room is really good because it also it is like 100% applicable to D&D shit. You know, everyone sort of kind of has a piece to it. Good players play Build a Room as they play. When they ask their DM, "Is there a blah in here?" and the DM, a good DM, will say, "Yes, there is a blah here." This helps you. Helps your character, one, achieve things at once, helps you understand what your character wants in very small ways. All right, I'm going to teach you guys how to play Bad Rap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Woo!
All right. Some of you might have seen it, but it goes Bad Rap, Bad Rap, Bad Rap, Bad Rap, Bad Rap, Bad Rap. And the rules are simple. You start a rap like, "Every day I go to the store. Bad rap, bad rap, bad rap." Then I'm whore, but that's where my regular I'm only allowed after I do all my jobs I have to do. Because the thing is, it's called Bad Rap because you don't say chores. So it's just like, these are stupid games that kind of get you silly and dumb, but it's also mental exercises. The worst joke that anyone ever says when you tell them you do improv, and everyone says this joke, "Hey, how can you practice improv?" The whole thing is, all these little games are quick, tiny practices. So Bad Rap, you just go around in a circle, and then you do it till everyone like giggles and stops. So is everyone clear on how Bad Rap works?
Yeah.
It's an easy one. I'm going to also teach you Busted Tea real quick. I'm just going to throw some games at you, just it's hot, just to take home. Because again, the big goal is for you to take stuff home, because we can't solve it here. You guys got to practice. Busted Tea. Busted Tea is fun. Busted Tea is a game where you go around a circle, and all these games are you basically go around in a circle, and you the person to your left, you're basically building a busted tea, or like a tea fury tea or whatever. And first round is person one says, it's either it's one or the other. Basically, you either tell what the slogan is, and the next person says what's on the tea, and that's where the humor comes in. It's like, "Oh, it's a fish riding a skateboard," and the next person says, "Oh, friggin' fishabunga," or something like that. Most of these points are trying to get you to think quickly, get out of your own way, and just go with it, right? So round one is person one says, just says what's on the T-shirt, as in the drawing. Person two gives the writing on it. That goes around. Second is the exact opposite. Person one says the words on it, and then the next person says the illustration. And then I like to add in a third round, which is just for fun, which is everyone comes up with their answers immediately before you start. So it leads to some funny things, I think, personally. So instead of immediately coming up with the catchphrase, you have it in your mind already. I'm gonna need 3 volunteers. 1, 2, 3. All right, come back here. I'm gonna teach you something called the pattern game. The pattern game is one of the most popular kind of like splitting your brain, paying attention is one thing. Active listening is also very important. Let me get one more volunteer. Yes.
With the volunteer sheet?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why I did it. Okay, so everyone put your hand in the air like this. We should also be in a circle. It's going to be hard from the audience perspective.
Should we do something?
And you two stand here. Yeah, that works. Everyone put their finger in the air, and we're going to make a pattern. So the first person that starts points, and I'll say, no, just me, not yet. I point, and then I say hot dog, right? Okay. And then there's also another like improv buzzword that's freedom, power, responsibility. Person one always has the freedom because nothing's invented yet. Person two has the power to define it, and person three has the responsibility to carry it on. So what we're doing is I say hot dog, and then you think to yourself, hot dog, is he talking meats? Is he talking barbecue foods? Is he talking good nicknames to have? So let's just keep it simple. You say hamburger and you point to someone that's not me.
Hamburger.
Okay? And then you say
Potato salad.
potato salad.
Pepsi.
Not him. Him.
Pepsi.
Yeah. And then you point back to me.
Chips.
Chips. Perfect. So now we go in order. Hot dog.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pepsi.
Chips.
Hot dog.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pepsi.
Chips.
Now we do another round. So if you want to be real up your own butt about like the improv bit, you can keep each round in a shared world. So start say pool or something like that.
Pool.
Inner tube.
Ink table?
Intertube.
Sometimes people
Water
do.
slide.
Life jacket.
Sunscreen. Keep going.
Pool.
Inner tube.
Water slide.
Life jacket.
Sunscreen.
Pool.
Inner tube.
Water slide.
Hot dog.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
You keep
Pepsi.
going. See, what we're doing is we're gonna keep both patterns going,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna add a third. And if you want to be keep going and keep going. This is probably the #1 active listening game. And
Okay.
as I said, you can't teach active listening. You just have to do it. So let's start with hot dog and then throw in the pool one. Hot dog.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pepsi.
Life jacket.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pepsi.
And then, do I switch back or sorry?
No, it's a little confusing. Whoever started the pattern first goes. So after a while you'll throw in your pool. So
Okay.
yeah. So hot dog,
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pepsi.
Chips.
hot dog.
Hamburger.
Potato salad.
Pool.
Inner tube.
Water slide.
We dropped the food.
Yeah.
See, it's hard. It's hard. We've gotten up to 5 before, and you can do huge groups. It's perfect for almost any size. You probably do want. Well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, 4, 5, or 6. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I can't stress enough how good the pattern game is for all the things we want to do. It's really the only one. That's why I brought the volunteers up, because that's the only one I really, really wanted you guys to know. The other ones are fun, but that one is going to literally break your brain a little bit, to the extent that you can hopefully do, I don't know, if you're the DM and you're planning, your characters are doing their own thing, having their RP, you still have in the back of your mind what your whole campaign is going to be 6 months from now. But then they're talking, and then you immediately get a new idea, right? If you're a character, the player, and the person in front of you, if you are going in turns or whatever, you're listening to them while also your brain is thinking of what you're going to do. It's obviously going to do a couple things. It speeds up play, which can be a real bummer if you're going slow. And if you have that, it's going to go faster, and you're going to do cooler shit, because your brain connects the dots better, A to B to C. Did I forget any games? I said Ravioli, right? Yeah. 5 things. 5 things is very fun. Let's get 3 other volunteers up here. We got Kieran, John, and green hair. 5 things is really easy. Most games are doing a couple things. Active listening. I completely forgot the other things. Active listening. Idea generation, and then maybe something else. Okay, so 5 things is very easy. You point at someone and you say, John, 5 made-up roller coaster rides. And John makes up 5 roller coaster rides that are made up.
Okay, twisting tornado.
And we say 1.
Swirling volcano.
2.
The flying nimbus.
3.
The sneaky lizard.
4.
The tunneler.
5 things. 5 things. 5 things. 5 things. 5 things. And then you go to the next person and you call out their name and do the 5 things to them.
5 made-up dishes.
5 made up dishes?
Yeah.
Food.
The Tuscan tomatoes?
1.
The bananas flambe?
2.
The
cherry chicken cordial.
3.
The mashed potatoes and monkey brains.
4.
The coconut cream salad.
5 things. 5 things. 5 things. 5 things. And then you go to Kieran.
What are 5 mythical localities?
Made up places.
The back of a dragon.
1.
The grand city of Moraes.
2.
The treetops of Bellenhauer.
3.
The underwater city of Tim.
4.
And the sun.
5 things. All right, thank you so much. 3 more volunteers. You, all the way in the back. Yeah, it's you.
You've been chosen.
This game is called Zip Zap Zap. It's extremely improv snob important because there's a right way to play and there's a wrong way to play. The pattern game is a very important active listening game. Zip Zap Zap is a very important speed game. There's probably a better way to say it, but basically, let's semi-circle it up. And the way it's gonna go is point, I say zip, you point and say zap, and then you point and say zop, and you can go to anyone you want, and the point is to go as fast as you can, while still keeping the pattern. Zip, zap, zop, zip, zap, zop. Alright, so zip,
Zap.
Zop.
Zip.
zap,
Zop. Zip.
zap,
Zop.
Zip.
Zop.
zop,
Zip.
Zap.
zop,
Zip.
Zap.
zop,
Zip. Zap.
zop. And see, there we go. Thank you so much. That was a quick one, but it was easy. So, as I said, most improv games are silly and stupid. I made him walk all the way up here for that quick. Most improv games are meant to be quick, silly, and stupid to do the thing I said, like the dildo on your face, or to get your brain going. And if you do the pattern game, if you do Zip Zap Zop, your brain is gonna start hurt. Question.
What's the wrong way to play Zip Zap Zop?
This is wrong. Thank you. When you change it to clip, clap, clop, or grip, grab, grop, I hate it. It's because you can change it. It's fine.
What about Rip Rap Bop?
Rip, rap, rap. That I like. Basically, because the point of the game, it was invented to be like fat speed. And if you change it to something else, it slows it down. If people lean more into the grip, flip type thing, then it slows it down. But it just turns into a different game, and I think there's better games for that. This game sucks. It's really hard. It's called. Does it have a name? The game that sucks. So basically, you have to. Oh hey, look. I'll teach you the better version of it. So we just call it the character game. You point at someone and then you just give them a character. So it could be as simple as Robotic Rihanna, and then one person, whatever they think Robotic Rihanna means to them, they act it out and do it, and they talk and they try to go for a couple sentences, and then they switch, and then they kind of end their character with the next character, like, oh, but see my buddy Scuba Diver Jeff, and then like, I'm Scuba Diver Jeff, and everyone usually says their names because they don't know what to do. That one's a gimme for D&D shit, right? Making characters. It's gonna help you kind of get out of your way again, go fast. Do I want to do this one? Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Any questions? I'm gonna ask again. Hello.
Okay, so with a lot of improv, it can derail and go kind of the dark and more rated R.
Yep.
Yep. How do you prevent that? Like, what's a good way
So
to keep
when I
it?
said grounding, he asked, how do you keep with improv going like dark and rated R and shit like that? When I swore in that, which was on me. I think the whole having grounded I'm gonna give the improv having grounded real world locations, characters, emotions will help that. When people first start doing improv, that's when they're like, I'm this guy, captain of Mushroom Palace, right? When you first start, you go weird because you don't trust yourself. I don't know how to solve it other than, so there's also a power dynamic issue, right? If you're asking specifically because like, oh, we have this group, there's this one guy, he's always zany, he always does this, he fucks characters everywhere we go, things like that. And if it's really a problem, that's kind of like an interpersonal thing, and there's, with a D&D group, the power dynamic can be like real shitty. So I guess if you're the DM, you would have to be like, hey, stop. But personally, if you find yourself going into those ranges, just simply put, you have to learn to trust yourself better. Trust yourself to make small choices. Small, simple choices are usually better than big, whatever, choices, and kind of following your own internal logic. If your character is, dark and cussy, then yeah, you'll do it. But if you trust yourself to make a basic-ass human in a world that it can still be interesting, then you yourself will typically, eventually learn not to do that. Any other questions?
So actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there's something I want to say. Talking about like grounding yourself in real roadblocks. There's a tool that I actually was given. I've done improv as well.
Oh hell yeah!
And there was a tool I was given that's this character sheet. Basically, it describes who you are, where you came from. Mine was more for a haunted house.
Okay.
So it was what did you do to wind up in prison?
Okay.
That, but I modified it though for the purposes of
Yeah.
D&D. And the great thing about that is it gives you a grounding.
Yeah.
And it also gives you things to pull from. Like when you're in improv mode and you get stumped, you now have like these places and locations that are familiar to you.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of this, maybe you can help me out. There's 5 basic ways people always communicate, and it's like beg, seduce, I can't remember the other 3. I'm drawing a blank.
Horny, hunger, nature versus man versus...
Yeah, hunger. That's the one.
Yeah, I don't know specifically those, but that's what is so good about 5th edition, right? Because they have like your backgrounds and your
that
shit
stuff.
like that. One of the like I guess if we want to touch on like the actual roleplay part of this is like, I always say it, but the number one thing that's important is to give a shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
When characters don't give a shit about anything, like there's there to be like derailing things or whatever, it hurts everyone. If you yourself don't give a shit, then you're not gonna surprise yourself. So the number one thing is to give a shit about who you're playing or the world you're creating, and create like enough of a real, backstory that you will know that your elf fighter's favorite food is chili, and they went to a small school, and they're afraid of dragonflies because they're weird. That stuff probably won't ever come up. There's like an improv, not really, it's like a technique, and it's just, you just fucking ask questions about someone. So if you guys wanted to do that, basically all it is you just ask questions. You are a character. It's kind of like the character game where you're robotic Rihanna and someone just keeps asking, like, like interviewing you. It gets real hard after a while because the more drilled down everyone gets, you start to think about it, and then you start discovering things about robotic Rihanna that even you didn't know about. Any other questions?
When you're in the role of a DM and you're like, designing something for your players, or even when you're like running the session, is there anything that you try to do or keep in mind to like facilitate like them opening up to like make it easier for your players?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, like how can you facilitate open your people? I mean, it's tough because the easiest way is to say yes a lot. That's kind of like a basic answer. And I think the reason why you say yes a lot is to reward folks for doing stuff. You always want to not punish them for doing something weird. Like, it can be mechanically weird sometimes to be like, wait, what you just did is way stupid, and it's like way less effective than hitting someone with an axe. But hitting someone with an axe is boring usually. So if you can somehow reward them for it, it's you're essentially just ETing them to the good habits, but you can't lead an ET to water. So it's also a trust thing, I'd say, right? If you trust your DM, then maybe you'll feel like, oh, I can do the stupid bullshit and try it, as opposed to the way of like, oh, well, I don't want to. I mean, this might not be the best idea. And again, just encourage yourself to not metagame and not, what is it, Munchkin? Is that when you min-max? Yeah. Because that's not the point, right? D&D is a storytelling game, first and foremost. I mean, some people do play it as like a board game where you're just solving problems and shit like that, but I think the most fun is when it's 110% storytelling medium. Questions, anyone? I think I saw them over there.
So turning it around, have you found that doing D&D more has actually bled back and improved your improv when you're going doing that stuff?
No. Yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe no, not really, but
That's what you really think.
it's because it's not a two-way street necessarily. There are a lot of pre-planning you do for D&D. There's a lot of things that kind of run opposite of what a stereotypical improv-y scene will do. Sure, doing live shows and things like that is more like any experience is good when you get your brain going. But yeah, no, it is doing improv to D&D good. But D&D to actual on-stage real-ass nerd improv, not as much, because again, you have a plan, you have whatever. Any other questions?
Have you ever done any serious improv? I went to this really interesting show that was, it was, I guess, hipster improv.
Yeah.
It was like telling a story. Everybody was in prayers, and
Yeah.
they told this story about these two people throughout the night.
Yeah, she asked if I've ever done serious improv, meaning like not humorous. No. Accidentally, when, you're just doing a bad scene or whatever, but it's like, people aren't laughing at any of these things I'm doing. Oh no, now it's got dark. But that, I've never done it, I've seen it, and it's really impressive because when people get on stage and they panic, they get silly, they do make bad choices, and the like raw white knuckled sticking to their shit of not going silly, like that sounds horrible. as someone who extremely breaks and goes silly, the idea of like trusting the rest of the people and just going for it sounds hard. But I know I don't want to try it. That sounds.
Is it easier or harder to do improv and like humor stuff like that with like direct audience feedback, like laughter and stuff like that?
No,
or is
it's a million times easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she asked if there is a when there's an audience, does it help? And 1,000,001 yes, because there's another improv-y phrase which is follow the funny, and if you have an audience that's laughing, then you're like, oh, what I said was funny, and then you just kind of grok it more. There's a lot of times we have really good practices, and we realize like, oh man, if this was a show, would have crushed it. But then you do bad in the show. But oftentimes when you have an audience, you're following the funny shit like that, and you get out of your way and you just follow whatever laugh. There's another kind of buzzwordy thing, which is like, what is the one weird thing? This doesn't necessarily apply all that much to D&D, but for improv, you just want to, if you have a scene, you want to find the one weird thing. And I guess that can help for you to not overcomplicate a particular instance that you're in for D&D. It's a good brain exercise, but it's not as one-to-one as other things. Any other?
If you feel yourself like starting to repeat patterns, what's a good way to break that?
If you feel yourself starting to repeat patterns, what's a good way to break that? Good question. I don't know. It's a trust thing, in my opinion. Like most things like that are trust things, and part of it is you have to trust yourself to do other things. Also, kind of throwing yourself both first into something different. Practice, yeah. If I know when we were making characters, and then eventually it was like, oh, I made yet another character that's just me, and it's not as much fun. If you go for the fences on creating something, then I think it's a lot easier to do something outside the box there. Any other questions? All right, then I'll just do a quick recap of everything. And if people want to hang out and try the games, I can show you more, but the organized portion is over. So the pattern game, point, do pattern, loop it on top of each other, try to get as many patterns as you can go. If you want to be real hipstery about it, throw it, keep each of the patterns that are looping vaguely in the same universe. So barbecue, pool, vacations or whatever. We had 7-line story, and I'll say those lines again if anyone wants them. Once upon a time, and every day, until one day, and then, and finally, and ever since. Then we have ravioli, steakioli, say ravioli. Go around in a circle, rhyme, yada yada yada. Build a room. It's very simple, just as it sounds. You build a room. This room has a vase. It has a chandelier, and everyone goes around, creates a room, and then you can live there. Bad rap is you just don't do good rap, and you go around and make it the second sentence 110% sound like you're gonna rhyme the 2 words, and then at the last second make it not rhyme, and it's really, really hard to do that. And Busted Tea is just kind of a shitty game that you just go around and create bad busted teas. One person says what's written, one person says what the image is. Zip Zap Zap, Zip Zap Zap. That's all it is. Which other ones? Did I forget something? Probably. Well, thank you. That's all it is. Thanks for coming out here. As I said, I wanted to keep it more or less simple and just give you guys stuff to take back, because you can't solve these problems by doing something just once. So feel free to ask me any questions about these things or anything else, but that's all of this. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.